In this section, we're going to cover special examples and exceptions. Now, things don't always go as planned. You have multiple authors, you have editors. Those are pretty common. But every once in a while, you'll have an author that has the same last name and the same first initial. Using my name as an example, Garcia, it's a very common name, and you might find an author that has a common last name and then they both have the same first initial. So what do? Well, when you have authors with the same last name and first initial, this is the only time you can use brackets and within a name in the reference page. So Garcia, common S, and then you'd put Sunem in brackets, and then you would continue your citation. And in the second example, you have Suzette as S. Garcia. And then within the text, how do you differentiate? How do you know which S. Garcia is being cited? Well, you'd actually put the first name and then the last name, comma, and the year in the parenthetical citation. And that would indicate to the reader which Garcia you're referring to. What happens when you have two or more articles by the same author within the same year? Well, it'll be very hard for the reader to know which article you're referring to because it's the same person. So what you do is you arrange them alphabetically by title and then add in a lowercase a and a b and however many other letters you need for each article after the year of publication so the articles can be differentiated in the text. So as you can see, Spencer, S. Spencer, 2011 A, you can do this. And then Spencer S. 2011B, you can do this right as an alphabetical order by title, and I've used the letter A and B to differentiate within the text which particular article I am referring to within the text. Although magazines are not particularly scholarly in nature, sometimes you'll need to consult them and cite them within your work. Well, magazines usually are published more often than a journal, so you will include all the information that is given. So if you have the month or the season or the day that the magazine is published, you will include that within the date in parentheses. As you can see, the World Cup is big business. From Time Magazine is quoted as the first example, and that particular issue came out in June 12 of 2010. And usually a magazine will have a lot more issues than a journal, and you want to make sure that the reader is not confused or has to do an unusual amount of work to find the article. Give the reader all the information that you have so that it's easier for the reader to find that particular issue of this publication. I've given the example when you don't have an author, which is fairly common with magazines and web pages. If you have the print version of the magazine, then the second example is the one that you want to use. The first example includes the retrieved URL for the publication. Another exception is when you have a journal that is published like a magazine because they straddle the line. They're peer-reviewed but are published weekly. What do? Well, the example I'm giving here is of the nurses. The Journal of the American Medical Association is published weekly. So what do? Do you cite it like a journal or like a magazine? Well, you give the reader all the information that is available. So in this case, you would actually include the month and the day so that the reader can find this particular issue. What about newspapers? Sometimes you'll be writing about a particular topic that isn't found in journals yet or in a book because it's very, very recent. But the newspapers will have probably picked up on this particular topic and you'll be able to find information. In that case, this is the format that you're going to follow. You're going to include the author if they're available, the title of the article, the year, month, and day, the newspaper's name, and the page numbers. Notice that the page numbers don't always are sequential. So you may have an article that starts in section A12 but then is continued on A15. Be nice, let the reader know, include all of the page numbers. If you have a URL, because you have retrieved it online, be sure to include it as well. If you look through the 6th edition of the Manual for APA Style, you will not find a lot of information on web sources. And as we know, there's information coming to us from all sources, from all areas. We have movies, interviews, maps and technical reports, artwork, tweets, blog posts, lecture notes. How do you cite this information, since obviously it didn't come from you? Well, here is the formula. You use the author and the date if available, the title of the document, and then in brackets tell us what it is. Is it a tweet? Is it a Facebook post? Is it a YouTube video? And then how you retrieved it. And that's how you would treat a web source. Now, if there's not a date, and oftentimes web pages do not have a date, then you would use the letter N, period, D, period, to indicate that there is no date. You don't ignore it, you just simply put no date available. Recently, the American Psychological Association took out a 6th edition addendum for electronic resources, and it is available here on this particular LibGuide on the first page. So if you need additional examples on how to cite information that is retrieved electronically, be sure to check out this addendum. A bit more on web sources. If you're going to talk about a particular website in your paper, you do not need to include it in the reference page. So for example, if you are telling folks that the United States Department of Labor has a new site called the Occupational Outlook Handbook located at, and then you give the URL, you're not really going to that site and taking anything out of it. So you're not citing it per se, you're just mentioning it in your paper. So you wouldn't have to put that in your reference page. Something else about web pages, you don't italicize anything there, unlike your journals, magazines, and your books, where italics come in. With a web page, nothing is italicized. And I've given an example here of a web page that does not have an author, which is not uncommon, and I have given a year. Sometimes a year may not be available as well, and so you would put N, period, D, period, close parentheses to indicate that there's not a publication date. This concludes the video series on APA style. We hope it has been useful to you. Feel free to listen to the videos as often as you need them. Visit your local reference desk to ask questions, or your writing center at your Learning Resource Center. And check back on this webpage for more information on APA initiatives for 2014.